Hi, I'm going to show you how to make a needle felted pumpkin today. Now, this is using an actual wool felting needle, and this would be appropriate for kids maybe age 6 or over, especially if they're good with their hands and they're not, they're good with scissors and you're not too worried about them harming yourselves. I'm going to do a video on how you can do wet felting, which is a little bit easier for kids, but it won't make 3D objects as well after I do this video. So look for that if you are looking for something for younger children or maybe children who you don't really trust with the needle. So what you'll get in our pumpkin making kit, you could also just buy this stuff yourself and make your own pumpkin, but you'll get a decent amount of orange wool. This I kind of had some different colors dyed into it, so you get a little bit of a color change when you make it. Some white wool, this is going to be for the inside of your pumpkin. A little bit of brown, this is a nice rust color, and a little bit of green. This is a light olive. So you're going to start first with the inside of your pumpkin, and this is the part that's not going to be seen. So it doesn't have to be perfect. You'll get a ball of white wool, and you could actually just leave it like this because you're just going to be turning this into a ball. If you wanted a little bit of a slender, tall pumpkin, you could unroll it and make that. And if you wanted to break this apart and make 2 pumpkins, you could do that too. So I would just roll it into the shape that I want. I'm going to do a nice round pumpkin. And so I'm going to roll it just into a ball as best I can. You're going to be able to change the shape a little bit as you get it all together. So don't overly concern yourself with getting this part perfect. Okay. Once it's in the shape in general that you want, again, it's going to change a little bit. You're going to pick up your felting needle, and I have this foam block to felt on, but if you don't have a foam block, that's okay. You could just use an old flannel shirt or something fluffy that you're okay if it gets a little pokes into, but in general, we're not going to be going into this much for this project, so you don't have to worry about that. I'm going to start, especially where my wool ends, but I'm going to start just poking it. There's no real rhyme or reason. I'm going to try to kind of move some pieces over to make them smooth. You can see how there's like kind of a little hill on top of there, but I'll just kind of move it over and I'm just going to keep poking it. That is felting the wool together and making it stay in this shape. And it's also going to make it a little bit tougher and harder. So you're just going to felt until it is at least all the pieces are together and it's a little bit tighter than it was before. For a pumpkin, we're not worried. It's going to stand up, really well being a ball like this. So we're not worried about getting a perfect bottom, but you could make the bottom a little bit flatter so it stands up. And you're going to do that just by poking. Now you don't need to worry about right now making those ribs or lobes that you see in a pumpkin. We're going to make that when we add our orange. So I'm just going to keep poking until it is about as hard as I want it. And I'm going to want something a little bit harder to poke into as I put my lobes on, but felting wool is pretty easy and I'm not planning to use this as a toy and throw it around the house, although my children probably will. So I'm not worried about getting this too tough. This is pretty good. I'm just going to look it over one more time and see if there's any kind of loose spots. But as you can see, it's a ball. It's not coming undone. Especially as I add more layers to it, I don't need to worry about it too much. All right, I like that as the bottom. Looks good. I'm going to now add my orange wool pieces. And what you're going to do, you could just wrap the wool around it and it's going to stay on once we felt it on, or you can make it look kind of lobe like a pumpkin does by pulling off pieces that are the, what would that be, half diameter, what's that, of the pumpkin. So pieces like that kind of looks like a mohawk. And I'm just going to pull off pieces that will go all the way around about that size. I'm going to stretch them, and so you don't have to worry about them getting the exact right size to go all the way around. I'm just going to pull off enough that I think I have enough to go around the whole thing, and then we'll get them on. And if you get a kind of thinner piece like this, you can pull it apart and make it just a little bit thicker and wider. So I'm going to start, I've got all my pieces here, set them aside. I'm going to start laying this, so I kind of have my top and my bottom. I'm going to start laying it around the pumpkin. And it's okay if it has extra coming off the top here. I'll just felt that in, but you could also pull it off if it kind of bothers you. So from the top, I'm just going to do a couple pokes to keep the wool on. And then I'm going to, once I'm kind of get all the pieces on, I'm going to poke in right here and right here on the sides. I could do a little bit right now just to keep it in place, but I'm going to perfect it once I get all the pieces on, so don't overly worry about it. So I'm just going to go around the ball, poking in each spot here. So here's my next piece on, and I can kind of pull it to stretch it, but I don't want any of my white showing through, so I'm not going to let it get too thin. Okay, and that's kind of covered here. Now I'm going to move on to the next one. I might, since I have quite a bit of extra over here, I might kind of pull it to see how far it can go and use smaller pieces on the other side. Okay, next one. Again, I'll just lay it over. This one's a little bit lighter color, so you can see the difference between the light and the dark orange, and it looks really pretty. Got that one on, and I'll just keep going around my pumpkin with my pieces of orange here. This one's pretty thick at the top, so I think I'm gonna pull the excess off, and I could use that for another part of my pumpkin or for another project. I'm not good at always staying on the foam there. Okay, a couple more. And I really did kind of pull them long, so I'm just gonna a little bit more to go. I'm using some of my little pieces here. I don't need quite as much as these big old ones. Last piece. Actually, I've got two little pieces here I'll stick on. And you're just kind of tacking down the wool. It doesn't need to be on there like cement. Again, this isn't like a toy, although if your house is like mine, it might be turned into a toy. And I kind of have some extra here at the top. I could just felt that down, but I want these nice lobes to kind of appear. So I'm going to take the excess off, and then I'm going to tack on just the loose pieces here. Okay. And I'm going to start on the top and the bottom and kind of just tack them down, all the little pieces, a little bit better before I move on to the sides. And make sure you're kind of getting in there and getting between the orange and the white wool. And again, I'm focusing a little bit extra on the bottom because I want it to be flatter when I set it down on a table so it doesn't roll around. Okay, so that's my flatter bottom. And that's my pumpkin top. It's got a couple bumps here. So now I'm going to go around the pumpkin, not excessively because I want to make these little lobes, and just tack on the pieces. And if I see any white poking through, I'll just kind of go to each side and spread the wool there so that it's covered. So I'm just kind of focusing on each little piece, making sure it's on, doing a couple pricks there and here. a couple kind of loose lumpy parts that I will just tack in. And once you generally get it on, if you have any bumps, like I kind of have one up here at the top, I'm going to tack that on too. So once you get it in a general ball-like shape, you could just leave it like that if you like how it looks. I'm going to kind of go in between my pieces and just make little lines. Really easy to do where the ends of my pieces were. There's no space between the orange, all of the white's covered, but I'm making those little pumpkin lobes. And it looks so cute, especially if you have different shades of orange all the way up to the top. It doesn't need to be perfect. No one's going to make sure you have the exact right number or shape or size. It's okay. This is just for fun. Okay. You could spend the whole day making this perfect, but if you're someone who doesn't like to craft too long, don't worry yourself. It's going to look cute no matter what. Okay. I'm not sure how well you can see it in the video, but I kind of have these nice little lobes. You could keep tacking it in if you like the kind of tougher, harder look. I like when it looks nice and fluffy like this. I think it looks cute. Again, I could bother myself with getting every little bump in perfectly, but I think it looks good. And I like it to have kind of some dimension. So next I'm going to put on some of my brown wool to make a stem. So you're just going to roll it out and then choose how much you want. This is more than you need for one stem. I'm just going to pull off a piece about that size. And to make my kind of stemmy top, I'm going to roll it or fold it in half and then kind of roll it into itself. And then I'm going to focus on really needle felting the top stemmy part and let the bottom kind of hang loose because I'm going to use this to attach to the pumpkin. So here's where I'm going to use my foam and really fold in that brown. And then I'm going to just needle felt it to itself right here. So when you're using the foam, you don't want to go too many times on one side. You want to keep flipping it. Otherwise, the wool is going to start to get attached to the foam. And it doesn't have to be, look how quickly it kind of comes together. It doesn't have to be stabbed to death. But the more you poke it, the thicker it's going to be. And also smaller, right? So you could also poke down to kind of make the top look the way you want. Be careful because your fingers are on the other side of that and that hurts. Something you can definitely have by you is some Band-Aids in case you poke yourself. So there's kind of a perfect little stem. I'm going to pull apart the bottom here. I'm not going to pull the whole thing off, but I'm just going to pull off 3 or 4 little spots that will go into the pumpkin, kind of like this, fanning out from the stem. And I'm going to try to group them together pretty good so that my stem not only has something to attach with really easily, it also has the little parts of the stem that, you know, kind of fan out to the pumpkin, and it looks a little bit more realistic. And I'm going to try to work them into the lines that I made in the pumpkin, again, making it a bit more realistic. And then I'm just going to felt it on with my needle here. You can kind of pull them into each other so they're not fanning out so much once you get them on. And playing around with it a little bit. And then you can go right through the actual stem and poke it on. Trying to make it stand up as straight as you can. Pulling the other side here. You can go around the base, but not too much because you don't want to create a really thick line right there. And you can actually go through the top or the sides of the stem and get it to attach to the pumpkin a little bit better. And that's going to help you work on getting it a little straight. Need to make a little crease in here. Again, I could just kind of mess with this all day to perfect it, but this looks really good. So there is my little stem to my pumpkin. It's kind of a big stem. So the last piece, we have some green here in our kit, and you could try to make a kind of a curly green leaf shape. You could wrap it around and do that. You could also make an actual leaf from your green wool here. And to do that, this might be a little bit much. I'm going to just kind of fold it in half, and I have my little ends here coming out like a leaf. And I will again just work on my foam pad to make my leaf shape, and you're going to kind of tuck them in so it's not so big. And if your end comes out so much like mine does there, I might even pull a little bit more off. And this is going to make a little flat leaf. And again, you don't want to do too many pokes before you flip it, or it's going to get stuck to the foam. I'm going to bend back the top there and try to make a little tip. Clip. And once you kind of get the shape you want, and you get it a little bit evenly poked, you can make kind of the veins in the leaf as well. I'm going to make a vein go down the middle. And just a few little ones go out to the side, on the side of the leaf that you're going to actually see. And I'm going to poke the sides just a little bit. You don't want to poke yourself. Okay, I have my little leaf there, and so I'm going to attach it just right at the base. And you just want to do a little bit of poking, and you also don't want to do the very end because it's going to flip up like that. So I'm going to do just a piece or a poke or two down the collar or the middle of the leaf here. All right, and then if I wanted to kind of add a curly Q pattern around the pumpkin, I could do that. So I'll just do that real quick. You really need less than you think. So even this much might be a little bit thick of a vine. This might be a little bit longer than I want. So I'm going to start the vine, kind of twist it my fingers, and start it at the base of the leaf. Of course, you could make yours look however you want, because this isn't necessarily how they look out there in your garden. I'm just going to tack it on in a little bit of a curly pattern. Kind of see what I'm doing there. You could make it a lot longer. So there is my needle felted pumpkin. That didn't take me very long at all. It's really easy and it's very fun and it's kind of relaxing. I'm going to make another video where I will show you how to make a wet felted pumpkin. It's just going to be flat. It's going to be easy for kids to do. Not messy, but a little bit of soapy. So this might not be something for younger kids. It may be more for older children and adults. But I'll do another video for wet felting from the same kit for the pumpkin. I hope you have a lot of fun. Bye-bye.